Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Leadership webinar hosted by the CMI Wales Board, organised in partnership with Swansea University final year students. My name is Natasha and I'm Events Coordinator at CMI, and I'll shortly be handing over to Gary to begin this afternoon's event. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can ask them using the live chat box to the right of your screen, and we shall answer as many as we can during the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared with you later today for those who have booked to attend. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and the CMI YouTube channel. Now over to Gary Metcalf, Education Expert on the CMI Wales Board.
Diolch, Natasha. Thank you very much. Croeso and Prynawn da. Good afternoon and welcome to CMI Cymru Wales latest event, Leadership Women in Leadership. While the level of equality within society is improving, true equality is still distant. Today's event will focus on modern business leaders and their professional experience in today's challenging business landscape. We've had COVID, we've had Brexit, and we've had everything else in between. So we're going to hear some stories as to how our panel has met those challenges. During the session, we'll hear each of the speakers' stories as they discuss their pathway to success in respect to their careers, as well as the hardships they've experienced along the way. In reflecting on their past industry experiences, they'll be highlighting the defining moments that have made them better leaders. Delighted to welcome this afternoon Kath Austin, who is the current chair of CMI Wales. Good afternoon, Kath. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Gary. Good afternoon and welcome to everybody that's joining us today.
We've got Lily Kramer, who's a senior planner at Costain. Good day to you. And last but no means least, a entrepreneur and co-owner of Crust, Katherine Jones.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Katherine. So let's kick off with today, and I'll get you just to do a brief introduction of yourselves so that we can get a feel for who you are, what your current role is, and how you've got to the role that you're in now. Katherine, can I start with you?
Yeah, of course you can. So my name's Katherine and I am the director and co-founder of Crust. And Crust is a cafe, deli and bakery based in Cardigan in West Wales. Our story begins back in 2016 when we moved. I'm talking about me and my partner Oshan. We moved back home to Cardigan from Cardiff to start our venture. So Oshan was a chef and I worked for a charity, Llamau, who support homeless young people and vulnerable women across Wales. But we always kind of had this plan together that we wanted to start our own little venture to do with food, and it was a kind of a cafe or a coffee shop, that kind of thing. We'd been planning what we wanted to do for maybe a couple of years before the move. And we'd, like, on our days off, we'd go to coffee shops because that's something we'd really enjoy, and we'd be sitting there with our little notebook and have loads of coffee and cake and start planning, brainstorming, oh, this is what we love about this place, this is what we should do in our place, all of that. And then we kind of took the plunge and started attending Business Wales courses in Cardigan. So we'd come back here on our days off from Cardiff to do that. And then we'd start looking for kind of premises to open a cafe, but we just couldn't find anything. So that's when we decided, right, I think we need to just start something and build our brand and build what we're about, because we wanted to kind of bring something back to Cardigan that was the vibes we were having in the city. So kind of a city social life, like a cafe, coffee shop with really great food, something that Oshan's really passionate about, and to kind of provide that experience for customers back here. So we thought, we can't find anywhere at the moment, so what can we start doing? So Oshan is a baker as well, really into baking bread and sourdough and real bread. So we came back, moved into his old grandparents' house and started baking bread and sweet treats from the house. And we'd attend the Cardigan market twice a week, and we'd also deliver to local shops and things like that. And kind of knew by starting small that we could build our brand and build a name for ourselves in the area, even before getting to the next stage of kind of acquiring a premises to start up a cafe from. So we did that for a while, and I think it was about a year or so. That was really hard work. And it was a bit risky because we both kind of just finished our jobs, moved home and did it. But we kind of had a plan in place and we knew what we wanted to do, but it was just about building it and getting it there. And then we were approached by a customer actually who came to the stall, one of our investors now, who said, I love what you do, you know, had the same kind of vision as us of creating a special space in Cardigan for people to enjoy. And then he introduced us to his friend Pete, and then we all teamed up together and opened now where Crust is now in Cardigan. So it's our cafe and bakery. We've got an off-site bakery now. We did start with the bakery and the cafe, but we outgrew that quite quickly. And I guess 3 years later, we now employ just short of 30 people. And yeah, it's been a crazy 3 years. And there was a really big transition in, you know, just the two of us baking from home to then having to have this big team to manage and develop. And I think that was one of the kind of toughest things that we had to do during that time. But we're learning and we're getting there.
That's great, Katherine. We'll delve into some of the challenges that you've had in creating the businesses as we go through this conversation. Kath, let's listen to your story for a moment. You're now chair of CMI Cymru. You've taken over the board from myself at the beginning of this month. But your career has been quite varied, quite.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, I've had a crazy time actually. When I look back on some of the experiences, I kind of hard to believe it was me actually. But I mean, I started my professional career back in the 90s when, you know, I think probably it's fair to say life and work was very different to today. I was very fortunate to get onto a general management graduate program with British Airways at the time. It was my first step into the professional world. And over the course of quite a few years, worked all over the world, did lots of amazing projects in every function from IT, finance, marketing, catering. And actually the last job I did with BA was an amazing job where I was looking after all of the catering units in the Caribbean and South America. And working with third-party contract providers, again, usually family businesses, usually male-operated, and providing sort of provision of food and services back to the UK. So, you know, that was a wonderful start in my life, really, being able to work and live all over the world and do many different sorts of jobs in quite you know, swift succession. I then took a complete leap out of airlines and hospitality and went into financial services, and had all sorts of experiences in financial services, from private banking to retail banking, and again, very, very different industry, different culture to airlines. And then from there, jumped back into hospitality and joined a company called Yum that operate out of the States and run quite a few very well-known brands. And then in 2012, I was the chief people officer for Pizza Hut, and we were looking at how we could transform the UK restaurant part of the business. And it was on a team of people that was looking to basically sell the business, and quickly became part of a team that looked to buy the business. So we went through an MBO back in 2012, And then the last 8 years, we've been evolving that business as a franchise operator and sort of thinking about what we do sort of in the forthcoming next decade, really. So I've done a whole raft of different jobs. My specialism is HR and also marketing, but I have had a range of experiences across a number of other functions. So yeah, a bit of a wild and strange career across sectors and job types, really.
I feel as if we've got a bit of a trend going on here. We've gone from bread and cake to pizza, and now sadly engineering, Lily. How are we going to get food into your career?
I love baking, but yeah, I actually started off as a kindergarten teacher, so that was my first job that I started training as when I was 16. I grew up in Germany and a very conservative area in Bavaria, and my expectation or my family's expectation was get married and have children. And so becoming a kindergarten teacher kind of like worked. And at 16, I didn't know anything else, but I absolutely hated it. So I talked with my mum and she was very supportive. And I got a really good career advice and I went back to school, did my A-levels. I said I was always good at math and physics. I like the problem solving. I want to do something, engineering, building, creating something. And so I ended up studying civil engineering. And then in Germany, the industry was quite damaged. So there wasn't many jobs out there. So I decided to take a leap of faith and come to the UK as an au pair, kind of like reusing some of the skills that I learned in the kindergarten and having loads of siblings. And kind of like, yeah, so freshened kind of like up my English. And then I did a year with Arab to kind of like do a dissertation, finish off my studies, get the engineering English in as well. And then I realized that, there were so many jobs here as an engineer to become that I decided to stay and joined a graduate program with Costain. And that was just an amazing kind of like career then to do different projects. I love traveling around, kind of like, going from Wales to Birmingham to London, kind of like different projects. But yeah, I came back to Wales eventually and I joined the ICE there as well, the Institute of Civil Engineers. I'm the vice chair now, so I'm building up to become chair for Wales, which is really nice to do as well, to support kind of like the local region. And then I was on a project where my manager left, who was in a senior position, and they offered me to kind of like go for that promotion. And that was really a defining kind of like moment, because I took it because they said, you're good enough for it, kind of like go for it. But I felt really out of my depth because it's like a promotion 2 steps up and lots of like suddenly management leadership responsibilities. And so I kind of like looked for something to help me, and I got kind of like some coaching, which I really supported me to kind of like elevate my career on that level. So that was really a defining moment to get that support, have a brilliant team, and kind of like get that specific support for me to kind of like become a great leader and manager. And I took that then to actually set up my own little coaching business that I ran in parallel with doing my senior planning role. Which works really well now with COVID, was working from home. So my project is in Cornwall, but I can work from here and then visit once in a while when they need me on site. So that kind of like given me a lot of freedom, actually.
Thank you. Just to let our audience know, the majority of the questions that I'll be asking our panel today have actually been submitted by final year students at the School of Management in Swansea University, and they're covering 3 specific areas. So I'm going to move on now to our first area, which is to understand your experiences and how the lessons that you've learned can be applied to our audience. So starting off, Kath, as you seem to have such a busy work commitments with what's happening with COVID and the lockdown, and restaurants that don't open or can't open because of lockdown. What's your approach to work-life balance, given your position of responsibility within your organisation?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I don't particularly like the words work-life balance, because for me, they're not 2 different things. So, for me, work is only work if it's not fun, really. And And most of the jobs I've done have been fun, otherwise I wouldn't do them. You have to pace yourself, and you have to, get all the different parts of your life in some kind of a balance, which I suppose is really what the phrase refers to. But the beauty of actually the last year has been the ability to be really super efficient, so you can carry out in a given day probably what would have taken a week to achieve actually beforehand. So, for me, I live in Wales. I do a lot of work in London and other parts of the UK. And, the hours and days I've wasted on the M4 and staying in hotels, all of that's gone. So, I use that time more productively these days. And for me, I get the balance by taking the dogs out down the beach and doing exercise and doing other projects. So it's more like change. So change is as good as a rest and all that kind of thing. But historically, it's not been an area I've been very good at. When I started my career, presenteeism was a much bigger thing than it is today. It's fair to say I used to pull all-nighters 2-3 nights a week to sort of prove that I was totally committed and dedicated and all that good stuff. You would never do that today, and I would never advocate doing that at all. But it's, I think with the power of technology, you can really get a good range of experiences in your life. And I think, again, sort of thinking about leadership, the more breadth you get into your week, whatever that may be, it may be clubs, societies, different works, projects. I think it just makes you a better leader because you just got more general good life experience, really. So for me, it's not about work or life. It's about the totality of life, I suppose, as a whole person life, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think we've all seen with the help of technology that we have more time to get out and about, and hopefully in Wales we'll be allowed at the end of this week to get a little bit further beyond our doorsteps with a slackening of the lockdown regulations. Lily, can I come to you with our next question, which is around male-dominated environment? Engineering, I think we can safely say, is a male-dominated industry. Have you had to adapt your approach to leading because you're a woman in a male-dominated industry?
It's a good question. I always absolutely enjoyed working in the male-dominated. So being a kindergarten teacher, I was women-dominated, and I just found there was loads of politics going on and loads of kind of the gossipy side, and just I never enjoyed that. Whereas when I kind of started working with men predominantly, I just felt like I was the odd one out. I wasn't involved in their kind of whole setup, and they appreciated me a bit differently. They treated me nice. They normally kind of thought about not swearing in front of you. So you always kind of treated a bit differently. And I like that kind of environment. I grew up with 3 brothers, so that was kind of I felt home there. When I got into leadership, I did notice, sometimes you didn't get taken seriously because you were, and I felt like I was a woman. That's why they didn't take me serious. Not everyone, but kind of some people that kind of just have that attitude behind it. And the nice thing for me was to kind of get the support from my managers when there was an issue, to be able to kind of say look, I feel like that I'm not getting anywhere here. You need to step in to support me, that, I am in that role because of kind of my qualifications and my experience, not because I'm a woman, and that I get the same kind of commitment that other kind of managers get. And that was really good. So speaking out and pointing it out when I had that feeling helped.
That's great. Also, you can swear back at the men in German, and they probably wouldn't. They
probably do know some of the German swearing words, isn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, there is that. Katherine, as a young entrepreneur in relative terms with the rest of our panel, have you found at all being a woman in business has so far affected the level of success within your career?
I've actually found that it hasn't, and I think that's obviously a positive thing because it shows the change that's happened between maybe when Kath started out within a leadership role, and then when I have, and I'm very early on in that leadership role. I started managing a team about 3 years ago, and like 1 year of that has been during a pandemic. So it's just, I haven't found that it's affected my level of career success as such. But I feel like I've just been lucky with the time that I've been able to come into this kind of role.
Okay. What have you done differently because of the pandemic from a leadership point of view? So you've gone from, I know you've got a really good diverse team of old, young, male, female, but have you done anything differently to integrate diversity into the team and into the organisation?
Since the pandemic, I guess not. For me, what's been important is to keep everyone on board and engaged and updated, because it's been quite difficult because we're in the hospitality industry. We've just basically had to just shut everything. So it's quite difficult to kind of keep that engagement with your team. So for me, that's what's been important over the past year, is to keep that engagement, keep up that morale, which is something that's always been important to us since opening. And I guess we've done a few things, like we've had a few quizzes and things like that, but most of all, it's just about keeping everyone updated with our plans and what we're doing, because you can easily get distracted because there's been a team of 4 of us that have been in doing like some of the baking and the online shop stuff that's helped us. And it can be quite easy to separate yourselves from the rest of the team because you're so concentrated and trying to keep the business going. But it's also been important to us, to me and Oshan, to try and keep the rest of the team on board and to keep them updated with everything. So I guess we've just done that in ways of like using our Facebook team page and phone calls and just all that kind of thing, just to keep everyone in the loop with what's happening.
So traditionally, you would have your team meetings in Crust. You'd have everybody together. You've got chitty chat throughout the day.
Yeah.
As soon as the pandemic's come along, you've had to resort to social media and other forms of technology. Just a shame we can't get computers and robots to bake bread as well as
I know.
Oshan does. Other bread providers are available in the Cardigan area, just to
yes, it's probably worth saying, full disclosure, Gary and I are big customers of Crust.
Yes, we do need the full disclosure. Thanks, Kath. I'm going to give you a difficult question now for that.
Oh, thanks, Gary.
So from your experience, Kath, your vast experience, tell us about how diversity has affected team dynamics and project success.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because I think probably more latterly in my career, sort of with Pizza Hut, we're a mainstream brand. So we're based all over the UK. We're in communities up and down the country, and we have to represent everyone's needs, otherwise we won't sell anything. For me, it's about being aware of what you don't know. So, if we do try and develop a new product, we have a sort of existing, quite a very diverse marketing team. So we do represent some views, but of course not everybody. You can't necessarily have a team that represents everybody's viewpoint. And I think just being aware of that. So, we do lots of customer insights. We talk to our customers. We have to involve our customers in the whole sort of product development process. And I think that is one of the key things, actually, whether you're talking gender or just the diversity and inclusion agenda in total. It's being aware of what you don't know and being aware of what you have a perspective based on your experience, and that doesn't necessarily represent everybody. And I think just that awareness of that is the first start to making sure that you're more inclusive. So I'd say that's one thing, talking to our customers and involving them in our projects.
I totally agree. I think it is important to get that the wider stakeholder involvement in everything we do. Lily, in the years that you've worked within engineering, have you experienced managers failing to integrate diversity into an organisation? And what have you done to try and raise diversity's profile?
Yes, so generally, I have been really lucky with the company I work for and the projects I've been on, that there was quite diversity behind it. Actually was one project I wanted to go on. I wasn't allowed to because I was a woman and they had too many women on the project. But yeah, it was the first time I actually got discriminated of being a woman to go onto a project. But anyway, so yeah, I had a project where they grew really quickly, and all the people that report in was men. And somebody came to me and said, like, oh, we want to nominate you for this and this award. Can you write us quickly something? And it was for kind of like female civil engineers. And I was like, it's kind of like really nice. And I looked around and I was like, I am the only female engineer in this organization of, over 100 people. And I was like, I realized this is why I didn't feel home there anymore, because it had changed so much. And that normal diversity that we often have on the projects, or I always experienced, was gone. And I mean, to be fair, there wasn't much I could do in the role where I was, but I did leave the project because I was like, that wasn't the right environment for me anymore. And I think this is a good one to learn as well, that, sometimes you need to change, and sometimes you need to get out of your comfort zone or get out of a project if it isn't right for you anymore. Sometimes there isn't anything you can do in a specific area, but you can make a much bigger difference in another area. And one of the things I did when I became kind of like the lead planner on the project, that I brought in friend that kind of like came back from maternity leave part-time, and we agreed to do a bit of a placement for 3 months for her to work out whether she can do kind of 18 to 20 hours a week, and for us to do as an organization whether it would work. And it was the best thing we ever did, and it worked very well for both of us. And it was a brilliant example of how anybody can work part-time, be committed, but get flexibility. And I think now COVID shows that even more, that you kind of like can work from anywhere, anytime, around loads of kind of like constraints, and using that flexibility as a leader is a kind of like a really good skill to have.
And I think that probably applies to not just about bringing diversity into the workforce, but any leader across any organisation having that flexibility. Kath, what's your take on that one?
Yeah, I think I agree. Actually, I think Lily sort of pretty much covered it. I think we just have to, again, be mindful of perspectives in everything that we do, really, and just make sure that we involve people and think through from other people's eyes. So yeah, I agree with Lily.
That's great. I'm just having a quick look at some of the comments that we've got from the audience, because we're about halfway through now. So before I ask any more questions, let's just look at some of the comments that we've had so far. We've got Caroline in Belfast who says she's excited to be with us. We've got someone wishing us a good evening, so I'm assuming that is going to be somebody in the west of the world, sorry, the east of the world. Hello from Leamington Spa, says Adina. Carolyn, I don't know where you are, says, my mouth is watering listening to Katherine, even without pictures. Fresh bread and treats, yummy. Well done on taking the leap of faith. You're inspirational. Somebody else.
Online. I already kind of like worked that one out.
Somebody else saying that they're starving now.
Yeah. Gary, can I ask you a question? Just turning the tables a bit. I'm just really interested because obviously you're a real expert with many, many years' experience in the world of higher education. What have you seen change in the world of HE? Because there have been quite significant shifts, haven't there, over the years?
I think the thing that I've seen is more women moving into and taking those entrepreneurial pathways with their degree programs. Typically, you would see male students wanting to be entrepreneurs because they're role models of the Richard Bransons of this world. Or Lord Sugar. You don't often see, or didn't often see, so many female entrepreneurs or business leaders. When we look at programs across Wales in particular, more and more women are choosing to do the entrepreneurial business degrees and starting up their businesses. We had, I think, 2-3 groups of students work with CMI Wales in final year projects last year, and the majority of the women in those groups have either gone into consultancy, which has been traditionally male dominated, or gone into creating their own businesses. So I think the big change in HE has got to be that shift into entrepreneurial enterprise.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, Lily, you made this point as well about confidence. I think, when I was growing up, you talked about your career sort of going into the nursing, not the young children's sector. You kind of had a choice, didn't you? It's called teaching, nursing, a few other things, and that's what your career advice was. I remember going to my career advisor and then basically saying, well, you could be a teacher. Why don't you do that? And it did feel like it was very much more limited, whereas now hopefully we're giving younger people a much broader range of opportunities, and particularly women, hopefully in sort of instilling the confidence to have a go at a broader range of things.
And I definitely believe, anybody can do anything when they have the right mindset to it. If they want to do it, they will find a way to do it. So it's all about kind of like finding the positive things and kind of like focusing on that, taking responsibility for your own life and your kind of reactions to what happens to you. And also kind of like that was one of the things I've learned with the coaching is that, we have everything stored up in us from our background, how we've grown up, and we create a lot of limiting beliefs where we just think like we are not good enough. And it will be a fundamental belief that you got that is just there, and there's not somebody that can tell you are amazing and then you suddenly feel amazing if 20, 30 or 40 years you've believed you're not good enough because people told you at some point and you kept on telling yourself. I mean, I had it with language when I first came over here. I was never good at language. I hated English at school, and I had that belief that I was just bad at languages. But, I am working in a foreign language, successfully. So, my English is good enough. But I had that fundamental belief inside me, and really just with intensive coaching and working with the unconscious mind, I overcame that kind of like belief. So, if you're noticing that you got limiting beliefs, there is something you can do about it, but it is working on your own and kind of like, your mindset, and then kind of take it forward. And, the world is your oyster and you can do anything you want.
Yeah, it is sort of the age that you can almost get to people, isn't it? Because again, when you're younger, you take a lot of influence from your family, don't you? And if your family haven't had certain experiences, maybe they haven't worked in business or they haven't set up a business, then they might have a very different view of risk and sort of how dangerous that is for your long-term career, and might encourage you or discourage you. So, I mean, again, with no poor intent at all, I remember, to your point, my mum saying to me, well, we're no good at maths. We don't do maths. And for many, many years, I thought I was rubbish at maths, which, it's not my strongest topic, area, but it's not also something I'm particularly bad at. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's these sort of templates that get laid down, don't they? And sort of capturing again, sort of your confidence to take the leap into running a business. What did your family think of that?
Well, in the beginning, they weren't very on board with packing in your job, moving home, and start baking from a house and selling at a market stall. I think it was just to do with the risk of it rather than like doing it. But now I think that they understand what the plan was, what our vision was, because we've literally made it happen. So, but yeah, no, my mum wasn't on board to begin with, but she definitely is on board now. And in fact, she actually works with us now in Crust, and she's on the team. Yeah.
So what's it like managing a mum?
Ooh, it's fine. It's good. It's nice to have like another insider's view on some stuff. Obviously, sometimes it can be a bit difficult because she's my mum at the end of the day, and I'm kind of having to boss her around sometimes. But sometimes it's good to have her experience and for her to bring her opinions to the table as well. And it's a bit like what we were talking about earlier with kind of diversity and stuff. Like our team in Crust, we have people from all different backgrounds, so whether that's farming, whether that's, we've got like someone who's been doing like science and stuff, because we're in such a rural area. When you put a job advert out, you don't get tons of applications that you can pick through with a relevant experience. You have to like get the people on board who want to join your team, and you've got to kind of teach them and coach them and train them. So you get a huge different kind of diversity within the team, but it's really great to be able to get their take on things or their ideas, or they bring their experience to the table, which I think is just something that we've kind of embraced. But it's been really good.
As you've been speaking, the three of you have been speaking, I think the key thing that I'm hearing is it's about communication, it's about engagement, it's about working as a team with your team. A question we've had from Patsy Skelton is, what's the biggest learning you've gained as a leader from mistakes that you've made? Lily, we'll start with you.
I think it's not really actually about mistakes and failing. It's actually learning from it. So, anything you do and where you kind of like fail, is that getting up again. It's less about, that you failed. We will all through your life, you will make mistakes, you will fail. Is that how you get up afterwards and how you kind of like make it better, how you kind of like learn from it. And one of the things is definitely about adaptability, learning from it, why it didn't work, to use a different way to do it. So rather than saying like, I do it again that way, it's the same as communication. When you talk with someone and they don't understand what you're saying or they do it wrong, it's going back to yourself and saying like, well, how can I talk with them differently so that they kind of like will get, you get a different response from it. Then I've seen kind of like somebody saying a question about whether it's more difficult to lead in a male-dominated environment. I think it's not more difficult. It's just different challenges. I think it's as kind of challenging to be a leader in a female-dominated kind of like area. Being a leader will always be a challenge. You just have different challenges and you have to adapt differently to them and find your way and your niche, your uniqueness of how you deal with it. And the more, I think Kath was saying it earlier, so the more you broaden your style of leadership, the more adaptable you become, the better you will be as a leader.
Katherine.
I guess one of my biggest learning curves was definitely managing a team and maybe having difficult conversations with a team or individuals if I had to, and I would maybe avoid them to begin with. So something I've learned is to just have the courage to have those conversations, because it'll just be better in the long term. So that's something that I've definitely learned. If I feel like, I've got to have a difficult conversation, I just get it done rather than try and push it back or avoid it or just not have it at all. But that's something that I've learned. And there's a sentence that I love that I read, and it's called choose courage over comfort. So don't just stay within your comfort zone. Choose courage and just have that conversation, even if you really don't want it. And the more you do these things and the more you have those conversations, the easier it becomes to have them. And that's something that I've learned from my mistakes at the beginning.
Kath, how about you?
Yeah, well, I think I've probably made every mistake in the book over the years, if I'm being honest. When I started out, I did lack confidence, and I'm quite a physical presence. I'm about 6'1", so I would walk into a meeting, and in those days you had the power pads and all the rest of it, the high heels, and I would probably sort of create quite a dominating figure before I even opened my mouth, actually. And I think over the years I've sort of learned you don't have to be like that. Soft influence is just as effective. Starting with understanding yourself, really. I think if you know your own strengths and weaknesses, then when you're working with your teams, you can build from that, and you can build teams around you that can help fill the gaps you don't have. And again, just adaptability. I mean, everybody is different, and an approach with one person will not work with another. And also that same person, they're changing in their life. Things are changing to them. So, what might work for them at one given point in their life won't on another. So it is all about really knowing yourself and knowing your people, I think. And just that level of honesty, I'll never forget, one of my team once saying to me, they're a bit scared of me. And I was aghast at that, because I thought, well, I'm not scary, And then I thought, well, maybe I am. And so I think, again, if you can build a relationship where people can be just super honest with you, and you listen, and take that on board and adapt, that's the really important thing, really. So a bit of humility and a bit of listening is probably the two things I've learned over the years.
Yeah, I think we talk about communication, we talk about engagement. Listening is a good one. It's one of the things that when I'm coaching women as a leadership coach, majority of my clients are women. And as Lily's touched on, it's that those self-beliefs that you're not good enough. And you need to listen to what people are saying to you, but also listen to yourself and actually be positive. Which brings me to some of the pre-submitted questions that we had with the bookings. Heidi Waggart has asked the question, have you ever felt not good enough? So takes this a step further. And how did you overcome those feelings? Katherine, can I start with you?
Yeah, I guess there's been times where I felt like I'm not good enough. And if I think about what those times were, it was probably in a situation that I hadn't been in before, or something that was happening that I wasn't familiar with. So I would think, oh, I'm not good enough to deal with this. I've never dealt with this before. And then it's about kind of taking that phrase I mentioned earlier about choosing courage over comfort. And that's kind of the mindset I would try and engage with and think, right, I'm just going to give this a go, see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, I learn from it. But if it does, I also learn from it, because I know how to deal with it next time. But I think you don't ever, well, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever completely be over, am I good enough? Because I think with all the different things that happens in your career, there's going to be times where you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this because I've never done it before. But it's just about taking that leap and just doing it. That's how I've dealt with it anyway. You just kind of got to jump in the deep end and just give it a go.
Okay, so similar question to this. Nigel Adams says, how can I help young female entrepreneurship undergraduate students to believe in themselves when they're pitching, presenting well? They don't believe him when he tells them that they've done a really good job, even though he's videoed it and played it back. Lily?
I think I mentioned it earlier on. I think when you have a belief that, installed in your unconscious mind for years and years, if somebody else tells you that's not true, even if they show you a video, because you will look at it differently. You can look at the same video like different people, and they will get different things out of it. Most kind of of us probably don't like kind of having photos taken of us or seeing ourselves on a video, or it's all of that kind of all these kind of beliefs that we have about ourselves. And I only overcome some of these very strong beliefs through kind of doing intensive coaching. And I think for me, if you're giving people kind of that opportunity to have coaches that work with them and use the kind of unconscious mind side of it, then that kind of will make a big impact on it. And quick. I mean, you can change your belief by repeating it over and over again and doing kind of that way, but it takes much longer than working with your unconscious mind.
Thank you. Kath, Jodie Taylor has said, I don't believe businesses intentionally suppress women, but I feel there is an historic culture of overlooking their talent. She finds it exhausting and feels that she has to work twice as hard to get recognition. How do you overcome that, or have overcome that?
Yeah, so the thing is, I think it's very easy to sort of deny that and say, look, there's no problem here. But obviously we can see from the data that there still is. So, the first piece is you've got to kind of go, okay, what within your given organisation, what are the facts telling you So, I'm a big supporter of gender pay reporting, for example. And, it was great. Anne Franker put out a petition that got a lot of momentum to get it reinstated for 2021, which has now happened. And the thing is, in the reality of the numbers, you can then hone in on where the problems might be versus being very general about things. So, I mean, a general statement is that it's sort of in the course of my career, I've seen things positively shift immensely. Things have moved forward so much. It's untrue. It's very different in business to it was sort of 25 years ago. But it doesn't mean to say it's perfect. But I think in organisations, being able to see into and identify where do you need to put support in and support services. And it sounds like in this instance that I would probably advise to go find a confidential mentor you can talk to. Maybe get some advice from a third party about what you could do differently, better, who you need to talk to, if you need to escalate something or raise it up and make it something that's debated publicly within that organisation. I don't think sitting there and festering on it is absolutely not the right thing to do. You have to find an outlet which can constructively sort it or help you, if you see what I mean. But no, I mean, great fan of quotas and reporting and data, actually, because it leads to real action and really getting underneath what's going on. I
totally agree, and I'm sure Lily will agree with me, because we're both coaches working with leaders and businesses. I think from a CMI point of view, as this is a CMI event, CMI members have got access to the mentoring program that is part of the member benefits. And if our audience haven't looked at that yet, it's worth looking at. There are experienced business leaders across the UK who are mentors, who can support on specific areas. So do check that out. Going back to comments from our audience, we've got Dave in Bridgend, who is saying it's an excellent event. I've lost him. Where is he on my list? It's really excellent. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. We've got somebody who's doing a dissertation on the challenges facing female leaders in a male-dominated industry, who's going to be contacting Lily for hopefully a 20-minute interview on that. We'll match you up after this event. We have Constance, who's in South Africa, saying she's enjoying the event. The stuff around mindset seems to be ringing quite a few bells with people out there. Carolyn is saying progression only happens when you step outside your comfort zone. And we've seen that with you, Katherine. You took that leap of faith. And now you're in a position where even with the pandemic, you're managing to continue to succeed with the business. What if you look back on the last 6 years, Katherine, is there one defining moment where you thought, yeah, we've got it right, we've really achieved here?
I've had a few moments like that, really. It's not really been just one moment. It's more like it happens every now and then. And it happens when I take a step back and just think about what we've actually achieved. So it could be like a moment where I'm in the cafe and it's really busy, and I take a step back and I think, whoa, this is literally what we wanted. I can't believe it's happened. Look at all these faces enjoying their coffee and their food. Or it could be in a team meeting where I just take a step back, where maybe when someone else is talking and I just look at the team and I just think, oh, wow, this is literally something that I've always been passionate about, people and their careers, and wanting to kind of change the mindset of careers within the hospitality industry, and to try and get, like a team in this rural area on board with that. Sometimes I just take a bit of a step back and think, oh, wow, like this is actually happening, and I love it, and I think it's really important to do that, because you forget sometimes when you've got like that kind of tunnel vision, because you're just trying to get stuff done, or you're constantly developing or planning and trying to do things, to just sometimes take a step back and think, actually, no, look what we've achieved. This is what we were trying to do, and it's happening, and there's only more to come. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's you get those defining moments where you see everything is going smoothly. You've got that sense of personal achievement and that sense of achievement with the team. Kath, what about you? What's been your defining moment in your career?
Oh gosh, again, there's been a few of them actually. Very much, I think, sort of leaping out of a big global corporate company to actually becoming an MBO and becoming your own business. That was a big moment because, you know, I was on a particular pathway and I built up my advocates and my stakeholders and I was doing really, really well. And to sort of chuck in a probably more conventional route to then sort of taking a big risk on something that had, you know, high chance of failure at the time. That was a big decision to make. And I think, again, sort of going back to that point about sort of inner confidence and believing in yourself, you know, we all suffer from that. I think probably everybody, no matter who you speak to, would say the same. And it is having those sort of critical friends that you trust around you, where you can sort of ask them and say, you know, what do you think? And you know, you'll get honest advice from them. So they will be honest with you and they'll say, look, this is what you could have done better, or this is actually where you were great, it's brilliant. And I think that really does help to build your confidence. I've always valued people that are honest with me and have given me both developmental feedback and good stuff as well. And you need a balance of both and a bit of kindness in there. So yeah, defining moment was sort of taking that big leap into becoming a small business. And say that to do that, I did seek those kind friends, those people that I knew would give me a view, but do it with kindness. And, you know, probably one of the best bits of advice I had at that time, which I use myself quite often, which, you know, what's the worst that can happen? So, you know, if it all goes horribly wrong, so what? Go do something else, you know? So it's, I think, again, it's just making those friends and those people around you that know you and can help you at these sort of critical junction points, really. But yeah, I mean, we all have them in life, don't we? There's these key life stages and life takes a different path, and sometimes it's in your control and sometimes it's not. And yeah, just trying to find the opportunity in things as well. Because I think, you know, we've talked about COVID a bit, but, you know, I mean, that was a slammer for anyone in hospitality. And you've kind of got to, well, you have choices, don't you? You either go, well, this is it, game over, or you go, okay, well, what do we do? What how do we be creative and think differently? And again, you know, I know Katherine in the crisp business, and they did a great job completely diversifying and setting up an online shop and being really creative and going in that way. So for me, I think, you know, we're not individual islands. We all need other people. And I think no matter what it is, a junction in life, or you're not feeling confident, having a group of people around you that you can just source a viewpoint from and get some honest feedback is just vital, really.
Excellent. I've just been prompted to the time. We're talking as if we're sat in a coffee shop, as oblivious as to what's going on around us. We've got lots of positive comments around imposter syndrome. Good to hear other people have that sense of I'm not good enough, and some of our audience have been able to take some stuff away from the comments you've made. So last couple of questions before we go into the end stage of this chat. What are the 3 key recommendations that you would give our audience on becoming a better leader? Lily, can I start with you?
That's a good one. Yeah, I think, well, definitely one that Kath was talking about is that kind of network that you have. And I think that I realized that later in my career, actually, to maybe have it outside of, you know, the industry, because it's male dominated, and you want people that kind of like are representing who you are. So, you know, if I learn from my senior managers, then they're all kind of like men that have a family at home, a wife at home that supports them, whereas I am a woman that actually runs the household as well. So actually then having female kind of like leaders that you can learn from that kind of like have that similar mindset is much better to have. And you might have to look outside of the industry, and CMI is brilliant for that because it brings so many different industries together. So definitely create yourself a network of people that you can learn from, and that will give you that feedback as well, and share kind of like their learning. I definitely would say get yourself a coach. I think that's the best thing that ever happened to me. Kind of like push for that, have a mentor, have somebody kind of like, that is helping you, supporting you and pushing you kind of like to bring out the best of you. And just, go for it. I think is that kind of like, every time when you question yourself, just go for it. As Kath was saying, what's the worst thing that can happen? If you're talented, if you're amazing, and you all are, you will find another way to do it. If something, you just learn from it and take that learning and try it another way. Thank you, Lily.
My favourite phrase is it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. So Kath, I'm sorry now for what I've done. Please forgive me. Katherine, what are your top tips to our audience for being a better leader? Okay.
So number one, I'm just going to say it again. I've said it loads. Choose courage over comfort, because that's my go-to. Kind of just give it a go. As Kath, that's kind of installed that into me. And then another one for becoming a better leader is listening. And I know we've kind of said that a little bit and spoken about it, but for me, just kind of listening to your team and giving the conversation some space, not thinking of a clever answer to say back, but literally just listening and taking in what they've got to say, because sometimes there's some really great ideas out there that you might not quite notice until you kind of sit down and just really listen to what people have to say and their ideas. So give it a go, listening. And the third one, I'm going to say, I did have one and I can't remember it. I had it at the start when I started saying it, and now I've forgotten because I went off on a tangent a bit with the listening one. So, but they're two good ones. I'll stick with those.
Excellent, thank you, Kath. Your final three as we.
Okay. Definitely know yourself. I've said this before. I think if you know yourself, then you can work out better how to work with other people and understand them better too. Have a go. So that's always the attitude I think to have. Just have a go, and so, you'd be surprised with what you can do. And I think the third one, which again I'm still massively struggling with, so I'm definitely not here on this one myself, but perfectionism. I think if you could move away from perfectionism, so perfectionism, it sort of sucks the fun out of things. And I suffered from this. I'm very achievement focused. I like to get things done, and sometimes I can push for that final little 10%, which actually doesn't make a lot of difference, and actually can be the difference between a team having fun achieving something and actually it becoming a job and it becoming work. So I think as a leader, being very mindful about that line between when you're pushing for perfection and when you're really just trying to get to a target, and when is good enough, and encouraging people along the way and recognizing them for the successes kind of as you go down the journey. So that third one is sort of a watch out, because I say it's still a working project for me. Gary, can I just pick up on one of the questions in there, because there's a really interesting one that came up in the
very quick, as Natasha's about to pull the plug on us.
Oh, okay, just a really quick one. There's a reference in there to women being mean to other women in business. And yeah, I haven't experienced that myself firsthand, but I have read about it, and I understand it is a thing. And I think most of the time, bad behaviour comes from fear. And so, again, if you can recognise that other person might be fearful of you or feel intimidated by you or something like that, then again, everything you do sort of starts with you. So there is a way that you can behave differently or interact with that person to build a bond or build a relationship. But I would say most negative behaviour is fear-led. So sort of understanding the why and what's going on might help be a start point. So.
And as it's International Women's Day Monday, so it's International Women's Week this week, I think my response to that is choose to challenge. Challenge that behaviour in the workplace, and similarly with any choose to challenge yourselves as well as the organisation you're working for. Many questions that we've not answered, we'll try and capture we will capture those, and we'll try and post some of the answers from our panel across our social media feeds. CMI Cymru, which is Welsh for CMI Wales, is on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, so we'll be posting on Facebook. We'll try and capture some sound bites from the panel. It leaves me now to say a big thank you to Kath Austin, Katherine Jones and Lily Kramer. It's been a great event. We've had some great conversations, so thank you for your input. And just to flag up, we have another event on the 25th of March. And again, if you want to come to any of the Wales events, check us out on social media. As I hand back to Natasha, thank you, panel.
Thank you, Gary. You've taken most of my ending speech, so I will just wrap up by thanking you all again, and thank you, Gary, for facilitating this discussion today. So if you are a member of CMI, you can log into Management Direct using the link in the live chat, and you can find a wide range of exclusive and practical development resources and much more. As Gary mentioned earlier, we also have mentoring systems that you can also access. So please do take advantage of those. And if you're not yet a member, you can join our community via the link that's also in the live chat. And this will give you full access to the Management Direct portal. You can also sign up to the free CMI newsletter for the latest trends and tips for managers and leaders. So thank you again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.